It's a Tuesday edition of PFTPM. Didn't quite expect to see that today. Eric Weddle happy to be back in the National Football League after 2 years. Myles Simmons happy to be back out of the foul-smelling bowels, literally, of SoFi Stadium and with us today. I assume your apartment doesn't smell as bad as it did after the game last night.
No. That was a weird little thing. I mean, I texted this to you guys, last night as it was going on. It reminded me of being at the Oakland Coliseum. I mean, that place was a real, bleep hole, right? Like, this is SoFi Stadium just opened. It's not supposed to be like that. I mean, it was so bad that Sean McVay literally interrupted his press conference to talk about how bad it smelled. What a strange thing for a brand new stadium.
There was indeed a pipe that burst somewhere. I saw that earlier today. It was not Todd Packer leaving something on Michael Scott's carpet. The pipe did burst this time. That was one of Michael Scott's theories to explain the thing that was on his rug. Watch The Office on Peacock. There. I eventually landed the plane. So, very smooth. Very smooth. You can tell. I'm a trained and experienced and highly skilled broadcasting specialist. Let's get to what's happening in the National Football League. And let's start with the game that you attended last night. That was a shocker. And, we kissed a few frogs over the weekend. We had the Bills-Patriots game, not great. Bucks-Eagles, not great. Steelers-Chiefs, not great. I thought we'd get the best in the last spot. And, so much for my gut feeling about the Steelers.
Whoops.
But I had a stronger gut feeling. Hey, listen. I hear it from everybody else. I don't need to hear it from you. You aren't part of any of the wagering.
Just saying,
your Browns are home watching these games.
So what? I mean, I don't know. I was on the show, and you're like, oh, well, the Steelers, and then you pulled up the terrible towel on NBC, the primetime audience, which everybody had switched over by then, to see you just in time take out that terrible towel. And it really kind of looked okay after a little bit, and TJ Watt going in there for that fumble return for a touchdown, and then they made you look like an idiot.
I at least did not look like an idiot for about 45 minutes. I enjoyed it while it lasted. So, but anyway, one of the reasons that I was able to overcome what happened on Sunday night was we still had one more game. I was excited about the prospects of the Cardinals and the Rams. Chapter 3, what a game, closely matched until it wasn't. And we should have seen this coming because the Cardinals, for whatever reason, and we talked about this earlier today, I wrote about it at PFT, Kliff Kingsbury has a bad habit of starting okay to good to great, as he did this year at 10-2, and then it all falls apart down the stretch. And that's precisely what happened to the Cardinals. They just could not hang with the Rams. I was stunned. You were in the building. You saw it firsthand. What was your reaction to what played out?
Well, I mean, like J.J. Watt said last night after the game, I just thought it was flat out embarrassing, and when you are playing a division rival for the third time in a season, to have your team completely unprepared for what was coming, as Kliff Kingsbury did, especially as the offensive coach and play caller. Right? Like, that's what Kliff Kingsbury is supposed to be. He's supposed to be the offensive guru that's going to come in and help revolutionize things. And he's got his hand-picked quarterback from number 1 overall. And they finished the first quarter with -3 yards. Are you kidding me? 4 consecutive 3-and-outs to open the game. It was just unbelievably bad. And I don't think there's really any excuse for it. I don't understand how it could be that bad when you're facing a division rival for the third time in a season. I don't get it, man. And I just felt like when you're sitting there, especially at the end of the first half, there was only 35 seconds left, and I think they were starting at their -14-yard line. But if you think about it, you need something going, right? You need to do something at some point because you're not going to get the ball back at the start of the second half. And to run a surrender draw when you've still got 3 timeouts and you've still got Kyler Murray and you just say, all right, I'm going to go in the locker room. I'm all right with being down 21-0. I don't know how you do that. If I'm ownership, I'm livid today. I would have been livid last night. I don't understand what was going on with the Cardinals.
And the thing that was so glaring to me, Myles, when you look at the final statistics and you look at the rushing totals and you look at Kyler Murray, 2 carries for 6 yards, his lowest rushing attempt since Week 17 a year ago against the Rams. you can't win a playoff game with the most dangerous running quarterback in football if he doesn't run. And I think to the first drive of the Patriots-Bills game, when Josh Allen ripped off a 26-yard run, that's a tone setter. That's a play that gets the opposing defense on its heels and forces it to be cognizant constantly of the possibility that Kyler Murray is going to take off. You've got to have that in your arsenal. You've got to do it. I don't get it. I don't know if this is another situation where the ankle bothered him all year long, just like the finger bothered Russell Wilson all year long. The calf bothered Dak Prescott who knows how long after he came back. But some of these quarterback injuries, it's not how much time you miss, it's how long it takes to get back to who you were before you had the injury. I don't know what the explanation is, but he was running more than 2 times per game. And if Kliff Kingsbury is going to call his shot on behalf of Murray and say he needs the best game of his career, 2 carries for 6 yards is not the way to get the best game of Kyler Murray's career.
Oh, absolutely not. And, talking to Aaron Donald, Von Miller after the game, Aaron Donald specifically said that they felt like once they started hitting him a little bit, that they were rattling him, right? That he just was totally uncomfortable and he could never really get into any kind of rhythm. And I think, frankly, also, when you're going 3 and out that many times, you're not going to be able to get into a rhythm anyway. So they couldn't run the ball. They didn't really do anything where it was like, oh, Kyler Murray maybe handed it off to Connor, to Edmonds, or he may keep it. They weren't doing things like that. There was one play, too, where he's rolling to his right, and the Rams had him so well bottled up that he ended up sliding for a 1-yard loss instead of trying to get anything on that play. And frankly, I understand him doing that because as the quarterback, you do want to live to see another down. But at the same time, it just kind of showed this is the way the Rams are playing them. And the Cardinals just don't seem to have any solutions to anything that was being presented out there. And when that's the case, again, against a division rival, look, Mike, it's not like, we were seeing it with the Eagles and Tampa Bay, where it's the 2 seed versus the 7 seed. These 2 teams were the 4 and the 5 seed. All right, if the Cardinals had beaten the Seahawks in that Week 18 game, then this game would have been played in Arizona instead. They should have, in theory, won the division. So to not be prepared at all, like I said, it's just inexcusable. And I don't know what they're going to do about that. But you can't keep going on and doing the same things like you've been doing, because to finish 1-5 after you started 10-2 is unacceptable.
And the Cardinals have a very long history of not keeping coaches for an extended period of time. As I mentioned earlier today, the longest, and this team's been around more than 100 years. The longest anyone has ever coached that team was 6 years. Jim Hannafin and Ken Whisenhunt. That's it. Ken Whisenhunt took the team to the Super Bowl and didn't last much long after that. But for Kingsbury, this would be year number 4 coming up. And if I owned the team, and Cardinals fans everywhere should be very glad that I don't. But although based upon how we're seeing some of these other owners behave, you could do a hell of a lot worse than me owning your team. I'm starting to believe after 20 years experience of following this sport every single day, all the ins and outs, nooks and crannies, all of the nuances, all of the rules, all of everything that goes along with it, I think I could own a team and run a team and at least get to 7-10. But regardless, the Cardinals need to decide what they're going to do with Kliff Kingsbury. And it wasn't all that long ago that he was in the catbird seat when the Oklahoma job came open. And he didn't do the Mike Tomlin angry walk-off, never say never but never. He was very coy. Well, I don't, leveraging his deal. Well, it helps to win football games in December and January if you want to leverage your deal. He ain't getting an extension, and I wouldn't give Kyler Murray an extension right now either. That creates an interesting scenario, Myles, because I just posted this a little while ago. Unlike 99.9% of all players in the National Football League, they don't have any alternative when they're under contract for multiple years. They can't force their way out. Now, you could have different efforts, and it never gets that far. But Kyler Murray could just say, screw it, I'm going to play baseball. That's what's fascinating about it. And when you get ragdolled around a little bit like he has, and maybe there is a height limit for this ride, and maybe he is a little bit too small, and maybe he is a little bit too slight. Hey, but seriously, it was a point somebody made today, because Sims and I talked about it. We've met Kyler Murray before. I'm taller than Kyler Murray, and I'm 5'11" and 3/4. So, and I know from being at games when the Gladiators come out in full uniform, I pee. That's how scary and big they are. Seriously, I need to go extra garment on those nights because it is frightening how intimidating they are, how big they are. And I'm taller than Kyler Murray. Now, look, he can run and he can zip and he can do this and he can do that. But how many times do you have to be hit square to feel differently about football at that level? And I'm just saying, when you were top 10 pick of the Oakland A's, if you're not going to get the contract that you want and you're 24 years old, and I don't want it to happen. I love Kyler Murray, but I think he's at a crossroads. And I don't know how much he'll talk about it because he's very guarded. But I really do think that he's at a spot where he's got to ask himself, am I all in with football? Because if I'm ever going to get out, now's the time to do it. And I'm not saying, look, I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying he is the extremely ultra rare NFL player who truly does have another path to a professional sport that he could probably play a hell of a lot longer than he's going to play football, Myles.
Well, he does. I mean, this is the we're just asking questions segment. I mean, I don't.
Yes, just saying.
I know. What I think it's more of an organizational problem than it is just like a Kyler Murray thing for the Arizona Cardinals, right? I mean, I think about the middle of the season when Murray and DeAndre Hopkins went out for an extended period of time. Right, they were out a few weeks, and then they had the bye, and then they both came back against, I almost called them the Chicago Cardinals because that's what we're talking about, the Chicago Bears. And then they were both fine for a little bit, and Hopkins had to go out again. Right, so in that period of time, they beat San Francisco, they beat Seattle, but they lost to Carolina. And at the time, we were kind of like, it's what kind of big deal is that? They're playing Colt McCoy. It was Cam Newton's first game back. It's this, it's that. But I feel like that kind of was almost the turning point of the season. And we didn't necessarily all see it because if you're not beating the Panthers and you're not really being competitive against the Panthers in that situation, it's like, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Then a few weeks later, they lose to the Rams on Monday Night Football. They go to Detroit. They lose there. I mean, and just get their clocks cleaned, which is another kind of inexcusable loss. It's kind of the same thing to me that happened with the Chargers when they go to Houston and they get their butts beat, right? So I think it's not – I understand what we're saying about like, okay, well, is Kyler Murray going to do this? Is Kyler Murray going to do that? Is he going to think about going to baseball, la, la, la? Maybe Kyler Murray has got to be the one to say, listen, we have to figure out what's going on organizationally for us as a whole, that we're not just going out there and having embarrassing and terrible performances, and we have to figure out where that's coming from. Because if he's not put in a position to succeed, then yes, at a certain point – that's maybe something that's going to enter into his mind. But I also don't feel like if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you can be anything but all in as a quarterback in the NFL. And now that he's been doing it for a few years, that I feel like that's where he would be.
Awkward spot for Kyler Murray if he would be inclined to go see the owner of the team and have a conversation about the possible wisdom of a coaching change because Kyler Murray and Kliff Kingsbury have the same agent. Remember all that talk from 3 years ago, how that we were connecting the dots, and it was, Kliff Kingsbury comes to take over a team that just used a top 10 pick on quarterback Josh Rosen, and they tried to downplay it, and we knew all along what they were going to do. Here's one for you, and then we'll move on to other Cardinals news. You should be concerned about this. I hear the trepidation in your voice, and it's justified. And I'm just having fun. Please, I am just having fun. We're here to have fun, people. Before you tweet out what a moron I am.
Speculation button. Let's do it. Okay.
I'm throwing it to you. You play the role of Jerry Jones. Would you do Kyler Murray for Dak Prescott straight up right now? And if you were the Cardinals, would you do Kyler Murray for Dak Prescott straight up right now? The old Dan Pastorini, Ken Stabler trade from the 70s. Would you do Prescott for Murray right now, Cowboys to Cardinals, vice versa?
I would not do it if I were the Cowboys. I would do it if I were the Cardinals.
Wow. See, wow. I would do it if I was the Cowboys. The guy's 9-0 in my stadium. I would do it. I would do it if I was the Cowboys.
Whatever. I mean, I get that, but I think Dak. I think Dak is too good of a quarterback. And I mean, talk about another situation where coaching might be letting him down. Like that's one in Dallas.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And look, one of the things I've said all week, this is the theme of the week. There are a handful of great coaches in the NFL, and there are everybody else. And the truly great coaches in the NFL, this is something else I've picked up over the past 20 years. The truly great coaches in the NFL have an obsessive attention to detail, and they are on top of everything. And when they call a quarterback draw with 17 seconds left on the clock, their quarterback will get down in time to snap the ball again and spike it. And their quarterback will get out of the way for the umpire to spot the ball. And the center will get out of the way for the umpire to spot the ball. And they will get it. I mean, little things like that just scream out. And bigger picture, what we saw last night with the Cardinals, there will be a game plan that incorporates the biggest asset that Kyler Murray has, his speed. It's just obvious to me.
Right.
And there's a small handful of coaches who operate at that level, and then there really is everybody else. And you got 25% of the league churning through everyone, trying to find that guy that will join the best of the best. And nobody knows. Nobody knows who that is until they actually get on the job and show what they can do.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think about, look, what happened with Sean McVay in 2017, right? Who would have thought that a guy who was 30 at the time when he got hired and then turned 31 a few weeks later would then turn into what he's turned into? And what's kind of interesting too, and a few people on Twitter have pointed this out, is that, like, you know, oh my gosh, you know, Sean McVay's buddy has gotten the job and everybody just wants the next Sean McVay and this and that. Well, you look at the final 8, a couple of those guys are still in it right now. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, who was Sean McVay's quarterbacks coach in 2018 when they went to the Super Bowl. I mean, look, he's doing a great job with Joe Burrow. Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator in 2017 for Sean McVay, and he wasn't calling plays then. Obviously went on to Tennessee and then became the Green Bay Packers head coach. I mean, Matt LaFleur has done a fantastic job, as good of a job as anybody probably could have done, with the exception of maybe winning a Super Bowl in Green Bay there. So there's something to, you know, getting the right guy at the right time. But you're right. You don't really know who exactly the right guy is going to be until they get out there on the field and then they're actually implementing whatever their football philosophy is on a day-to-day basis.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.